a code red for humanity. Curb emissions and dramatically reduce consumption or face a world that is fundamentally different.
When Kermit the Frog sang, "It's not easy being green," I want you to know that he was wrong. He was wrong.
There is no planet B. There is no planet blah. Blah, 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 blah.
It is unequivocal that human activities are responsible for climate change.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon.
East Talk.
Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista, Series 3, The Sky's the Limit. I'm Ian Collins. This is the UK's numero uno green-based, all-singing, all-dancing podcast, and environment is the key to the agenda. The man who sits like an overlord on proceedings is the environmentalist and entrepreneur Dale Vince. Dale, good morning.
Yeah, morning, Ian.
I like the overlord type.
Yeah, I'm loving the intros. I don't know what's coming next. I'm looking forward to next week now to see what's coming then.
Yeah, they're being worked. There's a huge team of people working on these on a weekly basis and finally crafted up to the last 30 seconds before we broadcast.
And as you said, that overlord thing, I was thinking of that science fiction character from a comic that floats around on a disc. Do you know the one I mean?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I thought, that'll be it.
That's where you are, just surveying the terrain.
In Dandare. I think it was in Dandare. Anyway,
Dandare, that makes sense. Yeah. Let's survey some nuclear fusion terrain here then, Dale.
Right, so more sci-fi then.
Yeah, seems that way. What's going on?
Yeah, big news from the nuclear fusion lobby. They claim a massive breakthrough, and it's the answer to climate change and all that kind of good stuff that's been said for a very long time. They doubled the length of time that they sustained a fusion reaction to 5 seconds. And that took...
What does that mean then?
That took 25 years to double it from 2.5 seconds to 5 seconds. And they got more heat out than they put in. And that was, like a big deal. And this is going to save humanity in, maybe another couple of 100 years.
So this is, where do we go with this? The word nuclear is not always the most popular word to have in a conversation.
Yeah, it's the opposite of nuclear fission, which is about splitting atoms. This is about combining atoms and releasing, big amounts of energy. But it takes incredible amounts of energy and temperature to achieve that, which is why, up until very recently, it's taken more energy to create fusion than you get back out. Yeah. But, a 5 second burst, and it took 25 years to get it up from 2.5 seconds. That's moving at the speed of an ice age, is what I want to say. And
that's extraordinary.
There's no way. Years. Yeah, nobody should be talking about this like the answer to the climate crisis because, we don't have another 25 years, actually. We certainly can't wait for them to achieve 10 seconds.
Well, based on their own mathematics, they might be up and running with something in about 750 years.
It might be something like that.
That's kind of how I'm working this out.
and it never makes sense to me. We've got so much wind and sun. The technology to make electricity from it exists. We've got all of the answers, and it's economic, and it's being mass produced now and rolled out around the world. And still people are looking for the next horizon technology, like nuclear fusion, which has been the next horizon technology for probably 100 years or something. I don't understand why people do it, but there it is.
Here's a question from Abby on Twitter. In fact, lots of people tweeted about this. What do you think about the footballer and the cat? Would you have sacked him?
It's a good question. I think what he did was awful. I haven't seen the video, but I've had it described to me, and I just think
pretty grim.
It's incredible. Yeah. It was incredible. But, footballers are not doing themselves any favors lately, are they? In terms of some of the...
allegations.
The allegations, that are out there about footballers and the way they live and their attitudes, basically, to other people. But this attitude to animal, off the back of our hunt expose story as well, wasn't it? Where those hunt people,
absolutely right. Yeah. And what's interesting about this is, of course, it began. I don't know who filmed it. There was talk that his relative filmed it. I don't know what he thought he was going to achieve by putting it online, for goodness sake. That was always going to end this way. So now he's been fined 250,000 quid by the club. But I think what is kind of interesting is that a couple of the sponsors, Adidas, Vitality, have now sort of suspended. I don't think they fully dropped out, but suspended their sponsorship. That's when it starts to get perhaps a little more serious. I know this is the business angle, not the kind of ethical angle, but nonetheless, Is this where clubs would start to take maybe a different view from their original decision of saying, it's bad, we condemn it, but he's still with the club?
Yeah, I mean, it's like 2 weeks' wages, just to put that into context. So it's
True,
not,
yeah.
it's not the fortune the fortune it sounds like it is. But yeah, I think we all expect businesses to behave better, let's say, than they typically do, and so there'll be pressure on the sponsors to do and say something, and that puts pressure on the club to do more. And maybe they will do more. I mean, he played in the very next game, didn't he? Which caused an additional furore. And what he did was just incredibly bad. You've got to wonder what on earth he was thinking to do that. I don't know. But.
Not clever. This story is interesting because you are connected to this story as well. The UK drops its absurd case against Greenpeace for dropping rocks in the sea. That well-known tyrannical crime of dropping rocks in the sea. Just give us some background to this, Dale.
Yeah, it was a few months ago now, and I heard that Greenpeace were doing this amazing thing. They were dropping boulders into the sea to protect marine conservation zones from trawlermen, which I thought was a brilliant act. So I sponsored one of these rocks, and they dropped it in the sea in my name, and the government took them to court.
What was the crime then?
Well, that's a good question. Protecting fish, I imagine, upholding the marine protection zone status, or something that the government should have been doing. Actually, you think they would have supported them in that act, but dropping of the rocks, by the way, puts off the trawlermen because they snag the nets and rip them, so they won't go there. Greenpeace made it plain to them there are a bunch of rocks down in this zone, so they stay away, which is a fabulous thing to do. It's complete non-violent direct action. Anyway, the judge threw it out. He described it as absurd, the case the government were bringing, which I think tells you all you need to know.
Here's a question from Sally on Facebook. I've got some interesting information that might aid your next hunting investigation. Where do I send that to? Probably best place, zerocarbonistas@ecotricity.co.uk. Do that, Sally, and we'd love to hear from you. Richard on Twitter. Why waste your time with Nigel Farage?
There's a good question. Actually, we had a chat about the fusion story. It was on GB News last night. And I think, well, a couple of different answers to that. One is I'm not just trying to talk to Farage and, maybe change his mind about some things. I'm also trying to reach his audience, which I think is worth trying to do. And I don't think it's a waste of time. It's like, people have said the same thing about the Express when we began the campaign with them. But, that world has changed radically now. The Express are, completely on board, and the readers increasingly are as well. It was totally worthwhile. Whether I can achieve the same thing with Farage or a Farage-type audience, who knows? But actually, it was a decent conversation last night. I was very surprised. Gave me a lot of time to talk. And I think he didn't seem like a bad bloke, but I just thought he had the wrong facts. The stuff he believed in was just not factually based. So
But that's the whole point of doing interviews like that. I mean, I turned on the TV and happened to clock you and Farage on together. I thought I was pissed.
You probably were.
What's going on here? Am I seeing two Dales, one Farage and a Dale? Is it what's happening? But you're right. I mean, it's only by communicating with a different audience. There's no point in just talking to an echo chamber where people already agree and understand certain issues. It's a case of reaching those areas where people are not yet on board.
Yeah, I mean, a classic example, he talked about, renewable energy not being capable of providing all of our energy. I don't know what he bases that on. So I told him that we have enough wind and sun to power the whole country 20 times over. And then, he said something about the cost of green energy, and I pointed out that we spend more subsidizing fossil fuels than renewable energy. I think he tried to disagree, but I wouldn't let him.
Here's one, Dale. The UK must do more to insulate the country's drafty homes. This is according to Britain's climate change chief. His name is Chris Stark. Thoughts on that? I mean, that makes sense, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been around as long as the issue of climate change has been around, actually, insofar as it's the most return we can get for every pound we spend in terms of decarbonisation. It's on reducing waste. In this case, the waste of heat that leaks out of our old leaky homes. I mean, masses of our 30 million houses or so are over 100 years old. We've got
amazing,
arguably and allegedly the worst insulated homes in Europe, and for that reason, we consume vastly more gas than we need to, which in a crisis like this one makes it harder. So, they cite the example of a guy in an Edwardian house. He had to spend about 36 grand on it, but he reduced his gas bill by 40%. If we could do that nationally, it would be incredible to our energy bills, our carbon footprint, and our resilience as well. To energy shocks. Like the green gas plan we put up requires about 9 million acres of land at current ratios of land to homes. But if we had properly insulated homes, we'd only need 6 million acres of land and only need to build 2,000 gas mills, not 3,000. Everything about it is right, just everything.
Gregor emails and says, have you considered paying more for excess solar energy? It might encourage more people to take the plunge and get solar panels.
Yeah, the amount of export from home-installed solar panels is kind of more of an emotional issue than it is a hard financial issue. People want to get a fair price for their export, and I understand that, and it feels like a really important issue. But if you look at the amount of export compared to self-consumption, it's very small. And self-consumption, of course, is worth to you the avoided cost of electricity coming in, which is probably about 20 pence a unit now, And typical wholesale, this is obviously pre-crisis, but typical wholesale prices for export might have been 5p, and you might be exporting 10% of your total generation for like a quarter of the value of the electricity that you use yourself. So it's a minor thing. We do have a tariff for that. It's kind of it's under development, and it's kind of a manual process. But we've got a list of people that we're paying to export power to the grid at the moment. But I would just say that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. It's not the main driver. When you install solar panels on your house, you need to size them according to your consumption, and preferably get a battery, actually, so that you don't export. Because when you do that, you're always going to be losing economic value. If you keep it until another time of the day when you need it, that's the best thing to do.
This one comes under the banner of tell us something we didn't know. US Congress are looking at Exxon and others for misleading on climate change since 1977. They've been at it for half a century.
Yeah, well, fair play to them. That's what do you call it? That's commitment, isn't it? To be at it for 50 years. It's just got all the echoes of big tobacco, hasn't it? And all of that denial of cancer and stuff.
Same deal.
Same thing. Same thing. And it'll catch up with them in the same way.
Yeah. Final question from Tina on Facebook. Do you connected in some respects? Do you think it's too late for the government to introduce a windfall tax, particularly since the boss of BP described their profits as a cash machine?
Yeah, well, that's very honest of him. No, it's not too late. It's never too late for a windfall tax, actually. And, even if it takes until the next election, and let's hope we get a Labour government, I don't think it'll be too late then either, actually. So, if you look at, I forget when it was, 1997, I think we had some big windfall taxes. Incoming Labour administration said, do you know what? The banks have been making loads of money on interest rates. We'll have some of it. Thank you.
Simple as that. Dale, that's it for this episode. We'll speak in a week.
Nice one.
Have a good one. Don't forget, of course, to follow this podcast from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. Do leave a review there as well. If you want to get in touch, you can email zerocarbonista@ecotricity.co.uk and follow Dale on social media, which is twitter.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince.
Zero Carbon East On.